Yo, how's it going? Welcome back to my channel. I'm Danny and this is Elite TV. And you know me, I love a rankings video, but I don't think I've ever seen a video ranking the top 10 dungeon bosses in WoW. So I thought, hey, let's do a top 10 ranking of dungeon bosses in classic WoW. But keep in mind, guys, while I have been playing WoW, or I should say classic WoW for a very long time, this list comes in the perspective of a new player. I'm hoping to motivate new players to go check out some of these awesome and underrated bosses in the game. Pretty cool, I think. But as we're about to dive right into the dungeons of Azeroth, you can also dive right into my channel and hit that subscribe button and comment below. Which bosses do you think are underrated in the dungeons of World of Warcraft Classic? And you know what? Don't forget to hit like and, I don't know, if you want, share as well. But yeah, I'd really love to see what you guys think are some of the most underrated dungeon bosses in the game right now. But anyway, let's jump right into it. World of Warcraft's top 10 dungeon bosses in Classic WoW. Let's go. Number 10. And for number 10, we're going to head down to Maraudon, and we're going to have a look at Princess Faradris. I mean, look at this setting. You got the waterfalls, the open roof, you've got the green, the bridges, and you don't notice that she's actually standing on a platform with cliffs to the side. She's got great boss mechanics, a knockback that, if you're not positioned right, can knock you off the edge, a silence, a fear. So your healers and tanks really need to be on it, because I believe she also does an aggro drop on the fear. Great loot table, and just an ugly looking boss. And look at those shoes she's walking on. How does she do it? I do not know. 9. So number 9, we're going to head down to Razorfen Downs, RFD, in the Southern Barrens. And we're going to be having a look at Teuton Cash, the spider boss, first boss in the dungeon. And upon arriving to his room, first you're like, where the hell is he? And second, you're like, what's this gong do? And you know, there's always that one guy in the group who's never done it, who just can't wait to hit the gong. We're still killing mobs, hits the gong, waves of spiders comes out, and you're just like, oh crap, what are we gonna do? You guys make it through there, and then Teuton Cash walks out, the big spider. Not an overly complicated fight. It's more about dealing with the waves first and then killing him. He doesn't really do all that much, but he does drop some awesome loot for a level 40, especially if you're a plate wearer. I think he drops a really nice chest piece for you. I can't remember off the top of my head, but not the greatest boss setting, but a really cool way to engage the boss fight. I love hitting gongs, man. 8. And number 8, we're actually going to go to Outland into a dungeon called the Underbog. And this is a very nostalgic boss for me, and that's the Black Stalker, the last boss of the Underbog. Now, these days, you kind of just zerg him down. Back, when we all sucked at the game, and I actually still suck, is that he would do some really cool mechanics. He would fling some guy up in the air, do a load of damage. I think he also had a fear, which you needed to make sure the tank either had a totem down or a fear ward down, because I think he dropped aggro as well. I can't remember his loot. It's just basic level 62, 63 loot, so nothing crazy. The setting is awesome. You're in a cavern, I believe also has waterfalls coming down it. There's like dead bodies of, what are those things? Nether rays all over the floor. Just a really cool boss. Those types of mobs always like reminded me of like War of the Worlds and stuff. So yeah, the Black Stalker, if you've never done it before, just remember that it could be quite healing intensive. Maybe not so much these days, but yeah, Black Stalker, nostalgic boss for me. I think he was the second boss I've ever killed in Outland. But yeah, Black Stalker, number 10, definitely worth a shout. 7. And number 7. This one actually kind of inspired my list here. I don't know why. But number 7, we're headed to the Swamp of Sorrows inside the Sunken Temple. And it's the first, and you feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the first big dragon guy you fight in WoW. And his name is Veranicus. Well, actually, it's the shade of Veranicus. He's like a ghost dragon who's asleep in the dungeon. You've got to kill some bosses, some previous bosses to make sure he awakens so you can kill him. Has a really cool loot table, drops an item to summon another boss inside that dungeon afterwards. The avatar of Hakar. I believe he drops that as the avatar of Hakar, the thing to summon him. But yeah, he's like the first actual dragon boss you fight. And when I mean dragon, I mean the dragon style of like, Onyxia and stuff like that, where you've got to watch those mechanics. Don't stand in front of him. Don't stand behind him. Stand to the sides. He has a really interesting, some really interesting mechanics, like a sleep. Obviously in front, he does like a fire cone breath. He does a tail swipe. So it's just a basic dragon fight. It's kind of preparing you for what's to come down the line. But yes, Veranicus, or also known as the Shade of Veranicus, inside Sunken Temple. Boring setting. He does have a really cool spike, like candle thing behind him. I wish I had one of those in my bedroom, to be honest, but I don't. But yeah, not the greatest setting. It's just like kind of a blank room, but you can't go wrong with dragons, man. I love dragons. Shade of Veranicus, number 7, I think. 6! And number 6, we got to go back to the Barrens, but we're going to go inside Wailing Caverns. And I might be a bit quick with this one. And that's the last boss, Utanus. Not the most exciting boss, but it's kind of the way you have to get to him. You've got to kill all the druids of the Fang. So you basically got to clear the entire dungeon, go back to the beginning of the dungeon, and talk to this Tauren right here. What that Tauren is going to do is set you off on kind of a boring, I guess you could say boring escort quest. He's got to summon some guy, you've got to fight some raptors, but then you get to this chamber with water in it. There's an altar with like this dead night elf guy. He starts doing this thing. Slimes come out, murlocs come out, Utanus then comes out. He's a giant murloc. Doesn't really do anything like special. This is more about the journey to get to him. You've got to clear an entire dungeon just to get to that guy, just to come back to the beginning to clear him. He has multiple phases. It's kind of like akin to the spider boss in RFD, where there's just waves and then you just kill him. Not the most epic loot table. The previous bosses drop way better loot in my opinion, but he is really fun for someone that is, 17, 18, level 17 or 18. So a low level boss that has quite a bit to him, to be honest. 5? Number 5. And this is from a dungeon I almost put on my top 5 underrated dungeons list that I did a couple weeks ago. Go check that out if you haven't seen that yet. And that's Arcadis I think his name is Arcadis, from Uldaman, the last boss in Uldaman. Not everyone's most popular dungeons. I agree. It's not the best dungeon. I do like not the second part, but like the last part of the dungeon where you get past all the trogs and you get more into the Titan area. But anyway, forget all that. Arcadis. Why he's underrated? He actually is quite difficult for the level. You've got to be a bit higher than the rest of the dungeon here, okay? He has multiple phases. He hits quite hard. And on top of it, awesome setting. You're in like this Titan room. He's kind of the first, I don't want to say Titan, but Titan-looking dudes that you're going to run across. I know you fight the maiden earlier, but this guy is truly something else. He is massive. I love big bosses. He has a big boss feel to it in a really cool room. And then afterwards, you get the Platinum Discs quest, which can give you something pretty decent at the end of it. But yeah, Arcadis, man, he's like a no joke of a fight if you're new to the game and you actually manage to make it all the way to the end of Uldaman. Arcadis, badass dude, badass looking, number 5. Number 4, y'all. All right, guys, we're getting into the meat of it here. Number 4, all the way back in Outland, into the Shadow Labs dungeon. His name is Blackheart the Inciter, and he can be a very frustrating boss or a very amusing boss, depending on if you've done it before, if it's you've got some new people in your group. But from the face of it, he just looks like a normal ogre boss. Does a knockback, does some damage, nothing, no big deal right there, right? But then out of nowhere, he just mind controls the entire raid. And I do suggest that you do use all your cooldowns before this happens. Use them right off the bat, because he will use them. I've played a shaman, I've played paladins, and he's always either, he's switched my auras before, he's used bloodlust. He always pops the cooldowns for some reason. And if you get very unlucky, you might end up killing, let's say, your healer. I mean, you won't, he will. You might when you get mind controlled, you start attacking each other, and if he's popping all your cooldowns, you might end up killing someone. It can be quite funny. It can be a pain in the ass if he does kill the wrong person. I think nowadays, because people are better geared, better prepped for it, no one really dies. It's just a lot of fun and chaos for when the entire group gets mind controlled and shit's just going everywhere. So overall, the Shadow Labs is an awesome dungeon. It can be a bit longer, but I think almost every boss in there is quite enjoyable. So yeah, go ahead and check out Blackheart the Insider and be prepared for some chaos. I love it. Number three, we're going to head back over to the Eastern Kingdoms to maybe the most famous landmark in the game, Blackrock Mountain, down into Blackrock depths. Quite arguably the greatest dungeon to have ever been made in WoW. At least that's my opinion. And we're talking about Emperor Dagran Thorson, and he might be the least controversial or least underrated boss on this whole list, because if you've played Classic, you've probably killed him. Loads of people have. But anyway, his boss room, the room that he is in, is so epic. It's as epic as the entire dungeon. It is a massive room filled with his followers, which you need to kill before engaging in him, or you're going to have a big party on your hand when you start engaging the boss. They will all join in on the fun right there. He's got his lady with him who's going to throw up heals throughout the fight. He's got his move where he turns into some flame thing. I think it's like the avatar of flame, and he's got his iron foe weapon. He's got loads of tough mechanics, and can be quite a challenge for new players or players who have never experienced him before. But he does give that epic boss feel, in my opinion, as well. The room just makes it so cool. He's got his throne, he's got his big thing behind him, and it's just a mission just to get to him. If you ever got the time, to spend a few hours in a dungeon to finally get to him. Definitely worth doing. Even at max level, go back, clear the dungeon, and just appreciate the beauty of this boss room. It gives you a proper big boss feel. So yeah, anyway, number 3, Emperor Dagran Thorson, who I probably butchered his name as well, but oh well. Number 2, we're headed to Dunmorrow, guys, into a place called More Regan. It's like the old gnome capital city, and we're talking about Mechgineer Thermoplug, the last boss of More Regan. I hate this dungeon, guys. I don't really go here. If I do it, it's just to do this boss, because he actually is a lot of fun and can be a bit difficult for that level. It's a low-level dungeon, late 20s, early 30s. Pain in the ass dungeon, but a cool boss fight. He's got a few different stages of his fights. He's got like this red button that is, he's got a few of them around in his room. Someone has to go hit the red button during the fight because there's different ads that come out. And he's got a pretty cool loot table as well. Drops a pretty nice ring from what I remember. The boss setting also really cool. It really fits the theme of the dungeon. It's, all of the mechanical gnomey stuff, the engineering type room, and he's in a pretty cool vehicle as well. But you may have seen that kind of artwork done already in a dungeon beforehand. But for a low level dungeon, this fight is gonna, you might wipe. He hits quite hard, but it is a bit rewarding to kill him. And like I said, he's the only reason I actually go to this dungeon, because it's such a pain in the ass. But if you're Alliance, and even if you're Horde, use the teleporter. I think there's one in Booty Bay. You can get there pretty easily. Go do this dungeon, because he is definitely worth doing. He'll give you that sense of accomplishment once you get him down. And all right, for number 1, we're headed to Westfall, and I'm sure you know what dungeon's there, and that's the Dead Mines. And we're not talking about Van Cleef or anything. We're talking about my boy, Mr. Smite. I know he actually is quite popular, but not really given the love, not really talked about too much. Everyone always talks about Edwin Van Cleef. Mr. Smite is the real boss of this dungeon. He's got 3 phases. 3 phases. You're not even level 20 by the time you do this boss. At least I don't think you are. But he's already showing you what's to come down the line. 3 different phases. He's going to stun you, I think 2 or 3 different times, use different weapons. And this is probably the first, I think this is the first time you're going to come across a 3-phase fight up until maybe even More Regan the next, a few dungeons down the line. He drops some awesome loot. Smite's hammer, so good. Really, really cool boss setting as well. You're fighting in front of Van Cleef's pirate ship inside this big cave. Really cool. He's kind of like the guard of the pirate ship. But anyway, the whole thing about why he's number 1 is because for such a low level boss fight, he has loads of mechanics, man, loads, and has a great loot table, and he also has a great dialogue box as well. He's a pretty funny boss to come across. Oh, look at that rhyme. Funny boss to come across. Definitely do the Dead Mines. It is probably the best low-level dungeon, pre-25 dungeon. That maybe if you count SFK. I love the Dead Mines. Whether you're Horde or Alliance, go and do it. But yes, Mr. Smite. Number 1, congratulations. Anyway, that was my top 10 list of underrated boss fights in Classic WoW. I mean underrated boss fights. I don't mean the best ones. I mean just ones that don't get the love they necessarily should, receive, or they're in dungeons that people don't really like to go to. But anyway, that was my top 10. Let me know what bosses I missed or ones that you think are underrated on the comments below. Don't forget to hit like, share, and subscribe. I'll be doing more underrated, lists coming out in the future. I've already got a few planned that we've already started, scripting for. So yeah, look out for those, in the coming weeks. But see you guys all on the next one. Peace.